Good day, good people. My name is Brad King, and you are listening to the Downtown Writers Jam video podcast, which is part of the Solid Listen Podcast Network. Max the Dog and I are coming to you from deep inside the Jam bunker. He is sleeping on the floor. He did not sleep real well last night, but I bet he's going to make an appearance at some point today because he always does. Very excited because today on the program, BB Russell, her book Kindreds is out now. So BB was born in Pittsburgh, but she was raised out in Western Pennsylvania or Western New York, not Pennsylvania. And she is a reader and writer. She's sort of done that her whole life. What I gravitated to here is that she has a PhD in education. And I've talked a little bit about it on the show, but not a whole lot. But my background is in education. And my first job outside of writing was teaching middle school. So I was very excited. Anytime I get somebody who studies education and has spent time working in that, like I'm always really interested. She's a professor and a therapist. And what's interesting is that this book, while not it's not an academic book. It is a trade nonfiction. Kindred's is, it's a young adult novel, but it is based on some of the things that she studied over time that she's seen. And so that to me is fascinating. Like I love it when arts and science come together. So when she's not doing all of her other stuff, she's hanging out with her husband, three kids, her dog, actually her two dogs. She has two dogs. I did not get to meet either one of them, but I was very sad. But if you're a dog person, education, and a writer, you're all right with me. Before we get to the conversation today, there's a little bit of business that we got to do. As you know, the video podcast comes out on Monday and Friday ish, and the jam proper comes out on Wednesdays. If you want to help us out, a couple things you can do. First, tell your friends about us. That is the best way for us to spread the word. And the second thing is for you to leave us a review wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you listen through Apple, you can leave us a written review, which would be amazing. You can also head on over to the Facebook page, leave us a review there. You can go to the writersjam.com and leave us a testimonial through the contact page. While you're there, you can check out this video series. You can buy the books of anybody who's been on the show by clicking on that bookshop link. You can get book reviews if you're looking for a book to read, or if you just want all of that sent to you, sign up for our newsletter. The other thing you can do is support everybody on the Solid Listen Podcast Network by clicking on that little Patreon button. If you do that for just a couple bucks a month, you'll get bonus content, commercial-free episodes, and stuff from everybody across the network. So go ahead and do that right now. Like I said, I'm very excited to have BB on the show. If you've heard me talk, you know I didn't love teaching. Teaching was not my favorite thing in the world to do. I don't do well in structured environments like that. That is not how I learned. And so it was very difficult for me, particularly as the world became much more outcome based, which meant everything had to be tracked to an outcome, which is fine. And I understand that, but not really my gig, right? I'm more of a constructivist, which means I like to let people play around and figure out what they do and don't know, and then help them fill in the gaps. And so talking to BB about education and about how that informed some of what she wrote. And again, not a direct line, but just things that she was seeing and the kinds of stories that she thought needed to be told and that wanted to tell. I just find that so interesting because it's hard. It's really hard. If you're not a writer, I'm just going to tell you, maybe even if you are a writer, it's really hard to sit down and go, well, here's a message or here's some themes that I would like to see, kids get. Like writing young adult stuff that is based in, science and solid educational practices and things that we know will make people healthy and better people, and then to also put an art on top of that, that shit is difficult. Like that's not something I could do. Like that, I just know for a fact I could not do that. So having somebody on the program and talking a little bit about that was fun for me because, it's just one of those things that I'm like, oh man, like this is really important. And if you are a reader, if you're listening to this program, I'm guessing that you're probably a reader of some kind. Like you probably read a lot of young adult stuff when you were young. And I got lots of friends that still read it, that still to this day like go through that stuff just because there's so many. It's more open in some ways. Like there's discussions of like feelings and empathy and all of that stuff that's far more present as sort of frontline elements of the story. I don't know why. I have some thoughts, but as I always say, like I'm not an expert in these areas, so there's no reason for me to opine about it. But I just know that like that's such a formative part of everybody's reading experience and living experience. Um, that it's fun to have somebody on the show that like actually is an expert on this and is actually doing something, in the young adult space. So I appreciate her coming on the show, and I appreciate you stopping by to spend a few minutes with us here in the bunker. Max and I always appreciate that. I hope that you are doing well. I hope your day is going well. And I hope that you are taking care of yourself as you get on back into the world. And I hope that you will sit back for the next half hour and enjoy my conversation with BB Russell.
Well, I was going to say, yeah. So the project started 9 years ago.
Okay.
But, I really wrote it in like maybe 8 months. And then for the next 5 years, picked it up, edited it, put it down, picked it up, edited it, put it down.
Yeah.
And it was really about 2.5 years ago that I finally decided, all right, look, I either need to put it out in the world or I need to just put it away.
Yeah. But that's the thing, right? Like people, so people have been hearing about this project. Like this is the horror of being a writer. It's like, I swear to God, I'm working on it.
Right. Yeah.
Like I'm not just sitting in my room surfing the internet. Like this is, I mean, maybe, but like it's all in, it's moving something forward.
Right. It's research. It's research.
Yeah. Or like recovering from writing. So like having that moment where you're like doing stuff in the backyard with your friends, that'll be cathartic.
Yeah. Yeah, it will be.
And tell them not to ask you what you're doing next.
Yeah, well, everyone already is like, so, is there a book 2? Is there a series? Like what, and I'm like, okay, like I'm working on it. I am, time frame, I'm not sure yet, but I'm working on it.
Yeah. Judging by the last one, it'll be 9 years from now.
Right, yeah. Exactly.
So everybody go about your business and I'll get in touch with you when I need to.
Yeah. No, it won't be that long.
Yeah, it's funny because who published your book?
Green Raiders Press.
Okay. So do they have like a first look at the next book, or like is the next one sort of on your own and you'll sort of figure out what you're doing with it?
So yeah, I can talk to them about it. And then we'll just decide if it fits with their catalog or if I'll just shop it myself.
It's, it's one of those, like, as you're writing stuff, like the first one takes forever. And then the second one, the publishers are like, when is that next one coming?
Right. Right.
So when did you start working on the second one? Or have you? Is it really more just in your head right now?
No, I've worked on it. It's probably like 3/4 of the way. I have like a really strong first draft. It's really in the editing process at this point. I started probably about 2 years ago. Once I knew that Kindreds was going to be put out in the world, I started outlining and, taking notes on my phone and just whenever I got a minute to write it down.
Yeah. Doing the thing.
Yeah, exactly.
It's really interesting, talking to all these writers and being a writer. It's always so interesting that first book is such a like walk in the dark where you're just like, I don't really know how this works. Like, I'm just going to keep doing it. And then the second one, everybody who does fiction has told me the second one, they're like, I know how to write a book, but it doesn't help me because it's a different process I'm going through the second time.
Yeah.
The only thing I know is that I know I can get to the end.
Right. I know I can do it. I started in a different place with the second one. I'm a lot older starting the second one, and kind of know my process a little bit better, my process now. And knowing I don't have to start at the, beginning all the way to the end. I can start at the end and work my way back. Or sometimes as you're writing, you don't know what's coming out.
Yeah.
And so, you think you got a storyline in your head and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, wait. There's something over here I got to add, or, oh my gosh, that was a character I never thought of. So it's a fun creative process. It's
always interesting because I'm a nonfiction writer. So it's always interesting because that is not the case in nonfiction, right?
Right.
The story the story sometimes goes where you don't know, but it's because you found stuff out, not because you're like, it'd be really good if this guy did this now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And we venture into in cold blood Truman Capote territory. And so it's always fascinating to me to hear writers, like fiction writers, say like, oh yeah, like I outlined it and then that didn't work. These characters wanted to do this thing and that was not what I thought they were going to do.
Yep. Oh yeah. Yep. Or, a new character comes in or you have to kill off someone that you really love or yeah.
Yeah. It's my favorite story. Like I never read the Harry Potter series specifically because my writing partner loves it. He's like, you got to read it. It's amazing. And I was like, just as a storyteller, when I saw the story, I was like, well, if Harry's really going to be the one, they're going to have to kill Hermione because she really is the one that solves every problem all the
She
time.
is.
And I'm
Yep.
like, so like this is, and I was like, there's no way that's going to happen, right? There's zero. And Rowling's has talked later. She's like, I really should have done this thing, but like that was me, and I couldn't do it. And I'm like, yep, this is
Yep.
the fiction writer's horror, right?
Right.
Like, I love
Absolutely.
this character.
Yep. I can't do it no matter what. Yeah.
So, what is Kindred's about? Give me the quick
Sure.
synopsis.
So the quick synopsis. So 16-year-old Lila is newly orphaned, and she reunites with a childhood friend, the one person in the world that she's still connected to, and he keeps disappearing. And so she ends up following him one night when he leaves, and he's going into this carnival world. And she finds out that the carnival is going to disappear in about 4 or 5 days. And he is going to go with the carnival. And so she has to decide if she's going to go into this carnival world with him or if she's going to just let him go. And so it's kind of her story, her process. There's some stuff in the carnival world that just doesn't quite add up. And so she's using her deductive skills, and she's connecting with some really cool people, but there's something that just doesn't feel quite right. So it's
Yeah.
her story of trying to figure out, all right, what am I going to do about this?
And since it's called Kindreds, we know there's a hint of what kind of carnival world this is.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yep.
there's a second word left out of that title.
There is, on purpose.
Yeah. So, so I was an education major. I actually taught middle school. Like what? And that's your PhD is in education. Yeah.
It is. It is.
What did you? Was it a secondary or was it something? What was it? What or was it?
So it's
overall?
actually in education and counselor education. So
Okay.
I'm a social worker, and then I also work with mental health counselors. And so it's education with a specialty in counselor education and supervision.
And clearly, this book, the fact that you're in YA, like comes out of that.
Yes, absolutely. I've worked with teens for a really long time. I work with adults as well. But yeah, my experiences as a social worker, working in mental health,
Yeah.
teaching as well.
Have you actually been in the classroom, or did you go straight through, or not in the classroom, but in a school?
So I've been a supervisor of school counselors and school social workers. I actually teach at a college level. So I teach the educators that are going to be going into the classroom, but no, not as a social worker.
So one of the things I always ask writers, I bring that up because I always tell people, like, every writer tells a story because there's a question that pops up in their head, and like you can't ask a writer like, well, what characters are you? Because the answer is always like all of them and none of them. Like they all
Right.
come from me, so they're all me. But like I'm exploring a thing,
Yeah.
and that's really where it's at. So what was the thing that popped into your head that started? Like, what was that question? What was that thing you wanted to explore?
So really, when we're faced with a choice, do we follow our head or our heart? Do we, go solely based on what we're feeling? Do we go based on what we're thinking? Or really, is it a combination of both? But that's really the question that Lila's grappling with, that, the writing seeks to answer.
Did it come from things that you saw? Did it come from, like, was there a moment, or was it, this is like, I'm dealing with these kinds of problems on a regular basis? Like, this is what social work counseling is.
This is what social work and counseling is. I think teenagers, I think anyone really, but teenagers especially,
Yeah.
They got all kinds of hormones, all kinds of feelings going on. They got authority figures telling them to do one thing, trying to decide, do they want to fit in? Do they really want to belong? Like, what's the difference?
Yeah.
And
What
so,
is
yeah.
the difference? Wait, what is the difference?
Well, so fitting in really is just going along with the crowd, wearing the same thing everybody else is wearing, the same hairstyle, going along with jokes, things like that. Belonging is really more about finding a few people that accept you for who you are, and that you can be, wear what you want, talk how you want, have people love you for who you are inside and outside.
Yeah. This is a big part of your book, isn't it?
It's a big part of my book. Yeah.
See, I'm good at this game.
You
I'm
are
really good at this game.
Yeah.
I love being able to guess the plot. I feel like it should be a game show where I get to ask 10 questions and I'm like, here's what's going to happen. So did you do this because Like is there like I don't know YA stuff. So like, is there a genre of YA stuff that deals with this, or were you just like, these are things kids are going through, and I don't see this represented in literature, and like I want to tell a story.
So I think one of the challenges for Kindreds is that, um, it doesn't fit into one specific genre.
Yeah,
It is not a true like fantasy where they're going into like this whole made up
sure.
world. The carnivals actually could be in any town, USA.
Yeah,
And so, there's kind of a love story, but it's not like the focal point. It's contemporary, or well, it may actually be a little more historical because it's in the 2000s at this point, early 2000s.
my soul just died when you
I
said
know.
that.
Well, somebody said that to me, and I was like, oh,
Yeah,
2006 historical.
yeah,
But it fits lots of different genres. And we put it in like a contemporary fantasy because that is probably the best term at this point.
yeah.
But it doesn't completely fit there.
Yeah. But I mean, when you were writing the book, just because it's not based on, but because the question sort of arises out of what you see,
Hmm.
did you feel compelled to tell that story because those kinds of things aren't represented in YA stuff, or were you not even in that? Were you just like, well, this is what I see, and now I feel like I want to tell this kind of story?
No, I was seeing it. I mean, I was seeing a lot of the struggle with the young adults that I was working with, of just trying to figure out who they are.
Yeah.
Some anxiety, depression, feeling alone, feeling isolated, connecting with people, but then realizing that the connections aren't as strong as they thought.
Yeah.
Kindreds is one of those things that because I wrote it over time, I never sat down and I was like, I'm going to write Kindreds. I'm going to write a young adult. I wanted to write an adult thriller. I was
Really?
like, yeah, really. And what came out was Kindreds.
And you
And
pulled the arrow back and didn't hit any target at all.
did not even hit one close. Yep.
That's amazing.
But it's the story that for whatever reason wanted to be told.
I
And
mean,
I went with it.
like studying education, like I said, like that was what I did. And that people will, like every study says the way we learn is by writing stuff down because you're processing things that are
Yeah,
ethereal and you have to make them physical and you have to literally decide what you mean. So there was probably some element of you working out that question as well, too. I
sure.
mean,
Absolutely.
not only like as someone who studies this, but like as a parent, like
Hmm.
seeing this, because I'm sure
Oh,
I
yeah.
mean, shit, I'm 49 and I'm still going through this. Like,
Yeah.
don't tell the kids like this doesn't ever go away.
Right. And I wouldn't say that there's an easy answer,
Oh, yeah, of
like
course
at the
not.
end of the book, there's still a big lot of several question marks of, what next, and how
Yeah.
do I trust this? Yeah.
It's the worst part about being adult, right? It's like you're like, oh, at some point this will be solved. And you're like, nope.
Nope. Nope.
Yeah.
I just have more questions.
Yeah. Someday I'll be dead. That's when the test stops.
Right.
Right? Like it's a never
Happy
ending.
thoughts.
Yeah, but I mean, like, also, like, there is something. I think that's sort of that is one of the positives about being an adult is that you stop stressing so much about the answer,
Yeah.
and you're more, at least for me, like you're more like I've been in trauma therapy for like 5 years. Like I tell people, it's chronic. This is never going to
Hmm.
be solved.
Yeah.
This thing within me. I just now understand how the game works, and I have
Hmm.
more tools to deal with it. Like
Yeah.
that's winning the test. It's
Right.
not, oh, I'm going to belong and not fit in because you're like, yeah, maybe.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Every situation is a new test.
Yeah.
Damn it.
Exactly. Yes. Whether you want it to be or not.
Yeah. It's why adults nap all the time.
We do tend to nap a little more freely as adults.
Yeah. Cause you're just like, whoo, this is going to keep going. So I'm going to be here sleeping. I'll be back still going.
Yeah, I'll be back, but give me a few.
So
Mhm.
is the next book set in the same world or is it did you go into a different thing?
So the book itself right now is set in Ithaca, New York. The next one's going to be in Olympia, Washington.
Yeah.
And we are going to go into the carnival a lot more.
But I mean, so it's the same world. Like you're still in
Yes. So you're in sort of everyday world here, but then also the carnival.
Yeah. So what was it that made you want to keep pursuing that story world? Did you just like it? Was there lots of questions that you could pursue or like why?
There's some characters in the carnival world that Lila connects with that she wants to get back to,
Mhm.
which she doesn't really completely understand yet or hasn't explored. And I just think it's cool. I mean, I think it's cool to think about being able to escape into a world that's similar enough to the one you live in, but also, there's no adults, there's no supervision. It's just people your age. I mean, what 16-year-old wouldn't want to live in a world like that?
Yeah. So what was it that compelled you to stay in that world? Because I know sometimes I have writer friends that like are just adamant, like I'm never writing a sequel, like, or I'm never, like I'm
Yeah.
done with that world, and like I don't want to just stay there. I have other questions that I want
Yeah.
to answer. Like, are you still intrigued by questions there? Is that sort of what drew you into there?
Yeah, I'm definitely. And I'm actually intrigued the most with the relationships that will develop in
Yeah.
that world. And connecting, it's an opportunity for the characters to interact with people who aren't like them, and from people from all over the world, in a meaningful way. And so I'm, as I'm writing, as I'm working through it, I'm just interested. I'm curious about the depth of the relationships, how they're going to work out.
Yeah.
And that's what's kept me there.
It is always that's just one of those writer questions that always fascinates me because like again, doing nonfiction, John and I wrote this first book, and I had this idea for a trilogy, not with the same people, but in the same thing. And he was like, "Yeah, no,
Mm,
we've done the thing. I don't ever want
one
to do
and
that again."
done.
And I
Yeah.
was like, "Yeah, but like, I got 70 pages of this new thing." He's like, "Have fun."
Yeah.
I'm like, "Well, that's not how a partnership works."
Right. Right.
But then he went off and started writing fiction because that was what he had some questions that he wanted to explore, and like
Hmm.
that was just where. Do you have any desire to do nonfiction, or is like
So actually, I am working on two nonfiction, through the educational part of my career. One on cultural humility, and one on women and being visible in the
Mhm.
world.
Are those academic or are they like
They're more
essays?
they're more academic in
Yeah.
nature. One of them is one is more academic for social workers and counselors, learning
Mhm.
about cultural humility, and social justice, and the other, is, it's academic, but it's more of like a workbook, so it could be more of a self-help
Gotcha. But
type
it's
book.
not trade. Like these aren't trade books that you're doing. Those
Probably
aren't.
not.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
I run a university press, and part of what I did when I came here was we now do trade stuff because
Hmm.
I had been an academic. I didn't really love being an academic. Um, and there's a lot of research and work that comes out of there that never like there's literally a steel wall in between the world and the research.
Yeah.
And you look around today and you're like, oh shit, we got to figure this out because
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
things are going bad fast. Yeah.
Yep.
So it's always interesting. Like that stuff for me is like, how do you translate that stuff? How do you like? So a lot of what we do are like essays, and we'll do edited essay books where I tell people like, you're not allowed to put any of your research in. This is
Hmm.
it's like think of it like a New Yorker article. I always tell people,
Yep.
imagine it's Malcolm Gladwell, only he understands science. Like that's what I want your essay to look like. Like get
Yep.
the science right, but do that in
Yeah. In a
context of
more
a story.
personal,
Yeah,
yeah, personal format.
yeah,
Hmm.
and that's super. I mean, I think that's as like that's as big a skill as writing a fiction book.
Oh yeah. Oh
It's
yeah.
really hard.
Yeah, it is. Well, right, because you have to be compelling, and it is really hard, as you probably know, for academics and people in education to make that jump,
Yeah, it's a different
because
skill.
it's a very different type of writing, and that was one of the challenges of
Yeah,
writing a fiction book. Is it's a different mindset, it's written differently, and so yeah, it really is two different skill sets.
and the academy does not reward you for the trade stuff. Like that's
No,
the thing, right? Like
right.
I was lucky. I came in the Boyer model where there was some, they put those creative endeavors as long as there
Hmm.
was some, panel review or something. But
Yeah.
it's also really hard because really smart people who are like, I'm a writer, you're like, I mean, that means a lot of stuff. And like, you can be an amazing academic writer, but that does not mean that you're a writer.
Right. Well, and
Right.
it doesn't mean that people have read it. I mean, that's one of
Yeah.
the things I found in academia.
Yeah.
I can write a fantastic article that I am super proud of, and I have, and 100 people read it
Yeah.
because it's only applicable to that
Yeah.
specific topic.
And you don't get the feedback, right? Like part of the
Right.
reason that it takes your novel 9 years to write is that I'm assuming lots of you were getting editorial feedback and like
Oh yeah.
things change because of that. And in a way that like in academia, I always tell folks I won't edit academic stuff because I'm like, you're saying things the way you want to say it, and I'm going to edit it. And a good editor will help you say it better.
Yeah.
But I found most academics are like, I've used the words exactly how I wanted to use them. And I'm like, super
Right.
great.
Yep.
Have a good time.
Yeah.
Like, whereas fiction and nonfiction writers who are in that trade are like, I need you to go in and break this down for me.
Yes. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
tell
Is it
me how to do it
relatable?
better.
Is it,
Yeah.
Is the dialogue, how people actually talk?
Yeah.
Or yeah. Mm-hmm.
The other good one is always whenever I'm editing, I'm like, I look for the first thing I do, I skim and I look for the summary. I'm like, wherever there's a summary, I'm like, there's probably more there.
Yeah.
Like you've probably summarized that because it's either too hard, it's too close to home, you got tired, but they're like, and then some things happened. I'm like, well, let's give me a few pages on what happened.
Right, on what actually happened. Yeah. Yep.
I find that's the most helpful initial editorial. Just like go highlight all the summaries and fill those out, then send it back to me.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm so happy that your book is coming out, that you got it done. That's a big deal. I'm also super happy that you have planned the thing.
Thank you.
And
Yeah.
that you're going to celebrate that and make your friends fawn over you.
That's my hope.
Yeah. It's a potluck, right? Like you're not making anything.
No, I'm not. My husband's taking care of all that.
That is exactly right. You are the queen of the day. You do nothing that day. You don't wash a dish. You just sign books and lord over your literature.
Works for me.
Well, you have a great day. It was lovely talking to you. Kindreds is out on June 15th, right?
That's right. Next Tuesday, June 15th.
And people can get it anywhere.
And they can get it anywhere. Barnes and Noble. You can ask your local bookstore to get it for you. Amazon. Yep. Green Raiders Press. IPG.
That's awesome.
Yep.
Well, congratulations and thanks for taking some time to chat with me today.
Thank you very much.
Well, there you have it. That was BB Russell. Her book, Kindreds, is out right now. Before we get out of here, just a couple reminders. If you like what you heard, do us those 2 favors that we talked about at the top of the show. Tell your friends about us. Give them something to listen to now they're back out in the world. Leave us a review wherever you listen to podcasts, particularly if you're using Apple Podcasts. While you're at it, don't forget to check out the other programs on the Solid Listen Podcast Network, including the flagship Mother May I Sleep With podcast with host and our Solid Listen Podcast queen, Molly McAleer. Don't forget, we got these video podcasts coming out like basically every Monday and Friday. You can find those on the Solid Listen Network YouTube channel. You can also catch the audio version wherever you listen to the Downtown Writers Jam. Speaking of, the Jam is out every Wednesday, so make sure you get yourself subscribed wherever you listen to podcasts so you never miss an episode. And remember, you can always catch us on Twitter and Instagram at The Writers Jam. Until the next time, I will see you around the internet.